Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And this is a shout out to Patrick, who sent me the following email, which is a real insight into what is happening in Zimbabwe. You know that country up north of South Africa? Now consider they only have a population of 4.5 million people. South Africa has a population more than 10 times that size. Largely black Africans. And this is a reality check. Patrick sent me this email from someone who's in the know in Zimbabwe, and they said, the level of ignorance about the coronavirus in Zimbabwe is shocking. For a people who claim to be highly educated, our views on the coronavirus are some of the dumbest. We see memes all over this. Do people actually realize that Zimbabwe could lose between 700,000 and 900,000 people from this virus once it hits? Let me explain. Now that's 25% of the population. If 30% of the population get infected, which is very much possible considering how easily the virus spreads, that's over 1 million people needing oxygen or ventilators. Now, let me just tell you, the first cases of coronavirus have now been identified in Zimbabwe. Trends from China and Europe show that whilst 80% of the people who contract the virus will have mild symptoms and recover, 20% of those infected will need some form of hospitalization and oxygen. 5% more will need intensive care and the use of a ventilator, a machine to help breathing in the case of acute respiratory problems. As of today, we have less than 50 intensive care beds across Zimbabwe. My mother works in a large hospital in Harare, and she tells me that they only have four, this is in Harare, they only have 4 ICU beds. 4. Crazy, just absolutely ridiculous. Wilkins, where you're supposed to go if you have the coronavirus, doesn't have a single ventilator. Estimates are that there are only 16 functional ventilators in the whole country. Let that sink in. 16 ventilators in the whole of Zimbabwe. So on these numbers, it means close to 4.5 million people will catch the virus once it hits, and about 25% of those will need hospitalization. That is over 1 million people in need of a hospital bed, with close to 52,000 of those needing a ventilator. Our old hospitals will capitulate under this, and people will die. Unlike China, we can't build a new hospital in 10 days, and we can't run away to seek treatment elsewhere, because every country is virtually on lockdown and is struggling to deal with the coronavirus as well. Italy, which should have a decent health system, is in its own rights failing to cope, losing 475 people in a single day just a few days ago. Mortuaries are full and newspapers are exploding with obituaries. And for us it may get even worse, because remember that people with underlying conditions which suppress the immune system like HIV/AIDS or diabetes or TB are at higher risk of getting critically ill if they contract the virus. We know that close to 20% of people in Zimbabwe have such underlying conditions, meaning that the number of people who get critically ill will be much larger. Every right-thinking person really needs to be educated and outraged about this and stop treating the whole thing like some hoax or some small matter. We face a great tragedy, especially considering that our main airports and ports of entry still accept people from affected areas. We also have medieval and frankly ridiculous methods of screening people for the virus. Last week, when I flew back in, no one actually checked my passport to see where I'd been. I was expected to be honest about my travel history. No forms, no declarations, no physical passport checks. I only had hand sanitizer sprayed onto my hands and got temperature checked using a machine whose functionality is highly suspect. It's as if people don't know that you can get the virus and go a whole 14 days without symptoms, while still being highly contagious and spreading the virus to other people during this time. In Zupkos, at church, at weddings, at bars, at work, to your family. And yes, basic hygiene advice sounds great, but is thoroughly hollow in Zimbabwe, because communities go without running water for weeks, even months. Folks can't even afford soap. People also have to hustle to put food on the table, and social mobility is high in Zimbabwe. With a highly informal economy, people can't exactly work from home. For those whose jobs can be done from home, they have to contend with 15 hours of darkness a day. It's a monumental shit show. Maybe a vaccine. Well, that won't be out for at least 18 months, and even then, it might initially prove too expensive for the ordinary Zimbabwean when it eventually becomes available. For some context, a yellow fever vaccine is about $50 in Zimbabwe. That for a vaccine whose demand is nowhere near the COVID-19. Only the rich and politicians will afford the vaccine when it comes out. The rest of us will have to wing it or die. So when people are rightly getting outraged about this and spelling out the gloom, please stop treating this like some joke or fear-mongering. It's an objective fact that we might be in for a tragedy of proportions we have not seen before. HIV and Ebola could be dwarfed by this overtime and extent. In fact, the World Health Organization recently just warned Africa to wake up to this crisis and to take drastic measures now. Our leaders are sleeping. The current measures like closing schools and limiting public gatherings are good, but the utmost priority should be closing the doors on infections coming in. No ifs, no buts. We need to stop pandering to foreign interests and stop the infections coming in. Once the virus hits, we face a serious tragedy for which we might not have enough graves to bury our dead. We need leadership now. Now, my understanding is that Bait Bridge, which is the main entry point into Zimbabwe or South Africa, it's the border point, is still open, and there's a huge amount of traffic going through there. You can see what this does. It's like an infection coming into a country like Zimbabwe from South Africa. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe.